Pam Matthews joining us from Nashville, Tennessee, where there's a thunderstorm in the background. And well, that's sort of thematically suitable for the storm that we're going through in the entertainment business right now.
It's a
What
wonderful
a year it's
metaphor.
been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's raining cats and dogs right now, and the claps of thunder really are sort of a metaphor for the conversation, right? So we always say, we have a rainy day fund, and this is a tsunami. It's like nothing I've seen in 40 years. I mean, it's just shut down. You've never had anything like this happen in your whole life, right? Like we have tornadoes, or even 9/11, but that was, um, it was an event. A tornado is an event, and then you clean up. 9/11 was an unprecedented event, but once we realized that was contained, it had sort of an end. We had an extended recovery and things changed, but this one, who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
nobody's crystal ball can say anything.
It's strange with the new protocols in place. We're going to see what kind of show costs are going to get inflated. It's already a tight margin business, as anybody who's in the
Yeah.
business knows.
Yeah.
So with reduced capacities and new safety measures in place, I think we're all going to have to reevaluate our expectations for what a walkout is going to look like for our clients and some of these venues moving forward. At least while COVID continues to flare up in terms of new cases in the U.S. The promising data seems to be that it looks like that the death rate isn't quite what they estimated it would be in the beginning. And so, there's always that silver lining. And I think it's so important in this business to evaluate things as they are, not worse than they are or better than they are. Right. And I think that's important in life too. That's a very general statement, but I think in this business, you get really easily swept up in either side of it. That when things are going well, people assume it's going to be like that forever. And when we hit a wall like we did with what happened with COVID, you also see a lot of pessimism, and it's righteous to some degree, but it doesn't exactly put you in the headspace you need to be in to solve problems moving forward.
It doesn't. And I think another thing that's important to consider is that COVID-19 does not affect everyone the same way. You may be in an area of the country where there are very few cases, or you may be in a hot spot. Also, I'm very mindful of the folks who are in dire straits right now. Let's just think if you work for a promoter and let's see, you graduated from college 4 or 5 years ago, and this is your first or second job. For a period of time, perhaps you received 20% of your normal pay, and then on June the 1st, you were permanently laid off. That is, let's also think that you have student loans, which many students do. I don't come from the days of student loans, but almost everyone does these days. So you have debt service, you might have a wife, 2 small children. It is very serious for a lot of people. And I feel that, like I really feel it.
Yeah, I certainly don't blame people for getting off the rails mentally and emotionally during this time. It's almost impossible not to.
Yeah, and I
But you're right.
struggle. Yeah, how to offer hope, because I think in the statement that you made, we must accept reality. This is life on life's terms, and what is my real situation, where I am, and how can I react today, tomorrow, the next month, 90 days, 6 months, a year, and then how can I be very conscious of those around me, offer hope and assistance. It's tough. It's very tough.
Right. Now, talk a little bit about the mandate of the International Entertainment Buyers Association and the mission statement and your guys' purpose in the industry for people who don't know and who don't understand what a great catalyst you are to helping create lots of deals in this business between buyers and sellers and people who are looking to network and grow their network. I mean, you guys have been instrumental in that for me personally. I'm excited to be part of the board, but talk a little bit about your function when things are actually somewhat normal.
Yeah. So in a normal situation, 80% of our members say that networking is the most valuable commodity that we bring. The ability to make connections and meaningful connections and actually do business. I hear that all the time. And we do it at the conference, and we do it at membership mixers in Nashville and New York and Los Angeles. And those have been, here's one of my favorite phrases. When we're having a mixer in one of those cities, people walk up to someone and say, "Hey, did you just get my text?" Or, "I can't believe we talk all the time, but I haven't seen you in a year." Like that kind of thing. It's really
Yeah.
to facilitate those meaningful relationships. Because when you meet somebody in person, things change. The chemistry of the relationship changes. It just does.
Yeah, there's something to be said for face-to-face communication,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that is becoming a bit of a lost art in this day and age where we all communicate digitally, and you've got these other platforms out there that are just purely social media fortified, and they're like, that's like the worst realm of communication, and then you get down to texts and emails, and then video conference calls are pretty solid because at least you can gauge context and reaction, but there's nothing that beats person to person. And you guys have so successfully built this networking opportunity with your conference, but obviously the conference can't proceed this year. So what initiatives are you putting in place for your members to help them continue to network during this strange time?
I'm not sure that our networking is going to be just because we really build on those personal connections that happen face to face. Everybody gathers once a year. And when I mean everybody, it is 90, roughly 90% of our membership is able to join us in Nashville every year. That's critical mass. So really we're relying on just information and the monthly newsletter and the virtual conference that will happen in October. So it's
Right.
just we can't be like a you and I were talking off camera earlier. I have not seen Cole or Claudia in 2 weeks now because we are only working one person in our small office building at a time just for safety's sake. So
Right.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I
you're not
think
even able to network within your own organization right now.
and it makes everything so much slower. Are you having that? Like everything is just taking longer because I can't get up and just go walk, or as I often do, yell, "Hey Cole! Hey Cole! Hey Cole!" Everything's just taking longer.
Yeah, I think that's just because I'm lazy, but it is taking longer for sure.
It is just the things that
No,
because our AIBA's year has a certain rhythm to it, and
right,
so right now we would be in the heat of the moment, getting those last minute panelists confirmed. When you put a conference together, then it kind of falls apart, and you put it back together. Like
right.
it's kind of like a festival does that, but to a lesser degree because we don't write checks. We don't write big checks to people. So we will be doing that. So the rhythm is different, but we still do some things the way we always do them in normal years, and it's taken longer these days. It just is.
Yeah, and you guys are still dealing with egos. You're still dealing with talent. When you're filling up these panels
Yeah.
and trying to get people to work together on a panel situation when they might be fierce competitors on the
I have
landscape of the business.
I have to tell you, so this virtual conference will be my eighth as IEBA's executive director. My first IEBA conference as an attendee was in 1989. So that's how long I've been around. But I have never seen an ego. I swear to you, Jim, no one has ever said to me, "I don't want to sit in a panel with that person." It is remarkable. And I hope that that's one of the benefits of being a trade organization is that we do have sort of that Switzerland neutrality. And it makes for a great conference, and it makes for great content too.
And I think everybody's pretty excited about the opportunity to contribute and be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I know when I've been asked to be on AIBA panels, it's always something that I'm honored to do and share what I know and be honest about what I don't know and absorb a lot on that panel too, because you know you guys often surround some of the newbies on the panels, which I was a few years ago, with veterans, with people who have done multiple panels, who know how the information is going to flow, how it's going to be received by the audience. So you've done a really good job at curating those now. is that a challenge year to year? And it's got to be a challenge coming up with new themes, because it seems like you guys somehow always come up with fresh themed panels year after year, and it always astounds me because I'm like, how are they gonna put a new spin on this very old problem that the
So
industry's had for decades?
yeah. So I started working for Bob Kelly at Mid South Concerts in Memphis when I was 15. So I have been promoting shows for 40 years. And isn't that, I mean, you have the same thing. If I've also run buildings. So if you have a building, how is your content new all the time? Well, it's sort of inherent in this business in that there's always something new to talk about. There's new talent, there's new ways of doing things, there are new genres like that. The EDM genre when it was new, and just the industry evolves because music evolves, entertainment
Right.
evolves. So one of my favorite things last year is when we talked about family entertainment, like JoJo Siwa and Baby Shark, like all that stuff. We didn't. Well, I guess we did have that, didn't we? Because we always had the circus and we always had Disney on Ice. So I guess we did have family shows.
But you're right, the shows themselves are different. The players in the industry sort of swap out, same as the artists every 5 to 7 years. It's like what was hot 5 or 7 years
Yes.
ago might be cooling now, but there's something in its place. And so you can maintain some level of freshness to the panels when you're pulling all that together. Now you've been in this business since you were 15, so obviously you knew from an early age you wanted to be in show business. What was the moment or the indicator for you where you just said, okay, I'm going into this full force, all hands on deck?
My dad was in the grocery business, and while that is a very noble profession, it is not the most exciting business in the world. And one of my best friends in high school was Jeff Dunn, and his dad is the famous bass player Duck Dunn. So when Duck and Miss Dunn were out of town, I would go over to their house and clean the pool, check the mail, get the messages off the Codaphone, and just be like Girl Friday. And so I worked for my dad. All of it. I mean, if you have a family business, like you're sorting coupons and running the buffer when you're 12 years old. So Miss Dunn said, "What are you going to do for a summer job this summer?" And I said, "I'm not sure. I'm sure I'll go back and work with my dad." And he was like, "Well, I have something fun for you if you're interested." And she got me the interview. She got me an interview with Bob Kelly. So if you'll indulge me, it's really my best story.
Yes.
It's my best story. So Bob Kelly had an office at Mid South Coliseum, and it was just a little. I'm gonna curse. It was a little shitbox office in one of those old coliseums. Just
Cursing is perfectly acceptable.
it was just a big old concrete box, and it was just there's nothing endearing about the Mid South Coliseum, and so there was nothing endearing about Bob's office. So his off he had an office in the back, and right in front was his secretary, because that's what we had in those days, secretaries. And there was two chairs, one right across from her. And when I sat in the seat across from the secretary, there was just enough room for a human being to walk between my knees and the desk. So I was told to be there on Tuesday or Wednesday at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I go. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm there. I'm like in the office at 9, not parking. Like I'm in the office at 9, and I sit and I sit and I sit and I sit. And the secretary goes to lunch and literally says nothing to me. She just gets up and leaves. An hour, she comes back, and I sit and I sit and I sit and I sit. So she goes home at 4:30, and I say, "Should I come back tomorrow?" And she said, "Do whatever you want." So the next day I came back, I bought a sack lunch and a book and an apple for her because I didn't know what else to do. So I sat there and I sat 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 and I sat. On the second day, Bob Kelly did walk by me, left for like 2 or 3 hours, and came back and walked by me. End of the day, I said, "I'll see you tomorrow." Bought a sack lunch, bought a snack for her, bought a couple of more books. And about 4 o'clock that afternoon, Bob Kelly calls me in his office and says, "So you're Miss Dunn's girl?" And I'm like, "Yeah." How do you know her? Told her how I knew her. What does your daddy do? Because again, this is the South. What does your daddy do? I told him what my dad did, and he goes, "If you want a job, be at the loading dock at 7 a.m. on Saturday." And I worked my first gig, and I worked for him all through college, all through high school, through the first couple of years of college, and that was my job interview.
And probably showing up the way you did early and the spirit you did, and having that backstop of work ethic that you'd grown up with,
Yeah.
helping your dad out in the grocery business. I mean, those things, it's interesting how life kind of gives you the necessary transferable skill sets to set you up to pursue the passion that you really want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
So
then,
the reason it was interesting to me is because Duck and Miss Dunn had this glorious lifestyle. Like it's Duck Dunn and Steve Cropper. So they played on all those Memphis records, all the Otis records, Otis Redding records, Rufus Thomas, all of that Stax Volt stuff. While I was in high school, Duck was played on the records and toured with Eric Clapton, um, Phil Collins. So when you walk into their foyer, it is floor to ceiling gold and platinum records. Um, Phil Collins did not call my house. They had just a really fun lifestyle.
was any of that intimidating to you at that age?
No, because I think I'd spent as much time as I had with Duck and Miss Dunn and Steve Cropper and Sam Phillips, and so I knew a little bit about that world. Memphis in those days was a very rich musical culture. So I saw Elvis Presley drive down streets in Memphis in a white Cadillac and on his motorcycle. So one time we were at a stoplight and Elvis was on a motorcycle, and my dad goes, "Hey, EP," and I thought my dad knew Elvis. Elvis bought his Maltese, his puppies, his Maltese from the pet store at the Mid-South Mall, Southland Mall, actually. I just, Isaac Hayes, Rufus and Carla, you just grew up seeing people all the time, the Jordanaires. It just was the culture.
Right. And
So,
do you
yeah.
think that the fact that you grew up in a culture like that makes you so comfortable to interact with stars when you're pulling off these panels with massive stars sometimes, and you've got no level of intimidation? I mean, I've watched you work a room, I've watched you interact with stars, and you're just so comfortable and in your own skin. But that's a trained process. Not everybody's just born with that.
I spent 12 years in artist management. So, but I don't know. So again, my dad was in the grocery business in Memphis, Tennessee in the 60s and 70s. So I literally mean that Elvis Presley came into the grocery store and Rufus Thomas came into the grocery store and Sam Moore came into the grocery store. So I didn't, when you're young, you don't know that it's not like that everywhere.
That's right.
So one
Yeah.
time, Dobie Gray, do you remember Dobie Gray? Give me the beat, boys, and free my
Hmm.
soul. Was
Absolutely.
singing to the music in the store, and I didn't know who he was. And I go, "You have a lovely voice." I was 8 years old, So I don't know. I grew up with it. I really did.
He probably needed to hear that from somebody who didn't know who he was. So that was
Yeah, but
probably
it
a
was so
blessing for
it
him
was
that
just
day.
this, a little white girl, um, and it was as sincere a compliment as you can pay. You have a lovely voice,
Yeah.
sir. Yeah, it's a great compliment.
And you also worked as a tour accountant for Ozzy Osbourne and Kiss. So were you out on the
Early,
road with those
yeah,
guys?
yeah, early, and I got that job through Bob Kelly through Mid South Concerts. Yeah,
And how
because
did you enjoy it at the time?
I loved it. It was great. I did Bark at the Moon, which was a tough tour. Um, it was Jakey Lee's first tour. So Randy Rhodes had already passed away. I do not come from a drinking culture. My parents don't drink. My grandmother had a little like pint of whiskey that she pulled out at Christmas, and people put it in their eggnog, and it was called flavoring. So I just didn't grow up with drugs and alcohol. So the 80s were just ripe with that. There was a lot of drugs and alcohol,
Right.
and so that always makes it tough. Drugs and alcohol make everything tough.
It's
I,
funny when we look back on those days and romanticize them. And, I was having this conversation recently about how when I go to Nashville, you go to a gym at 7 in the morning and you'll see Thomas Rhett and Sam
oh yeah,
Hunt and
yeah,
Kip Moore and
yeah.
Brett Eldridge and all these people there working out, working hard on themselves to better themselves and get themselves in shape so that they can be strong when they're on the road and provide their fans with the best experience. But that wasn't the way the culture was in the 80s. And even into the 90s, it wasn't
Yes.
like that
No,
at all.
no, no, no. And as a young woman, I will say that the gentleman in Kiss took great care of me, and they are businessmen and gentlemen. Of nothing but I did 2 tours. I did Lick It Up and Animalize, and that was a wonderful experience. I did not ride a bus. I flew with the band. Um, because that's what they chose to do with me, and it was very kind. I was treated very well, and that doesn't mean to say that I wasn't treated well on Bark at the Moon. It just was a different. Ozzy is different than Kiss. That's just
Enhanced experience.
it's a different experience. It's a different.
Yeah.
The show's different. The mindset's different. When your artist is struggling with addiction, that makes everything difficult. It just makes everything hard.
And was Sharon managing him back then?
I worked for the business manager,
Right.
and I'm not exactly sure. I know that they had their first baby, Amy, and Amy was on the road a little bit, and she was an infant at the time. Um, uh, if she so they were married, so in some ways she was managing him. What the formal
Hmm.
agreement was, I don't recall. If I knew at the time, I don't recall, because I worked for the business management company and I reported to them.
And so being out on the road obviously has its benefits and detriments. You ended up at the Ryman and you were the general manager there for years. So that would have meant that you were in one place at one time consistently. How did that dynamic play out for you personally? Do you enjoy being on the road? Are you one of those people who's like interested in being in a new city every day, or did it give you a little more stability to actually be put in one place for a little while?
Well, I did the road when I was young, and I think it was great. My transition was I spent 12 years with the Judds and Winona in management. So there were times where I was needed on the road, and there were times when I wasn't needed on the road. So I learned that balance of going out on the road and then also being sleeping in my own bed and going to the office all day long. So I already had done that transition when I went to the Ryman. And then I was just older when I was at the Ryman. I will say that there's something really wonderful about having your own house, and just like you don't have to do anything. Different acts just show up every single day, but it's your house. So you never it's your house in your town. So you never run out of anything. If you do, you know exactly where to find it. You get to be hostess, which I think is sometimes easier than being guest. I like being a hostess, so that worked for me. And in between, I did 3 seasons at Starwood Amphitheater, so I'd already had
Right.
building experience. Yeah, I like running buildings. I like it very much, and I like being a
So
promoter.
did you roll out on the road with the Judds as well? Like were you on the road with them when they were touring in their heyday?
Yes. So I started with the Judds in September of 1988, which was Greatest Hits Volume 1. So they had to get to a certain level before they could afford someone like me full time. So I did
Right. And then
marketing, and then
Winona really
yeah,
started to bust out on her own around 1991, 1992,
yeah, yeah,
with I Saw the Light and
March of
those singles.
'92. Yeah, March of '92.
Yes,
Yeah,
right. Um, so sexism in the music business is a hot topic, obviously. At one point you were, out on the road as a woman, with female headliners, bona fide female headliners with
yeah,
massive hits.
yeah.
Uh, did you feel like you guys were treated differently at that time, or like how has the culture evolved in that particular domain?
So sometimes I think it's hard for me to answer that question, because it evolved as I got older.
Right.
So it got easier for me. So did it get easier for me because I was older and wiser, or did it get easier because the culture changed?
Probably
Um,
both.
but yeah, so both, and it's hard to untangle that. Which is it? I firmly believe that things get easier as you get older. You have a body of knowledge and experience, which gives you some wisdom. So there's I hate to say there's very little that I haven't seen. COVID, a pandemic, is one of the things I haven't seen before. I hadn't done a national crisis like 9/11 until we did it. I hadn't done the Y2K. I mean, the Judds promoted their own show. We were the sole promoter at America West Arena in Phoenix for New Year's Eve 1999. So we did the whole Y2K scare. But back to your question. So about a year ago, someone actually said to me, "I need to hire someone. I'm not interested in hiring another young woman because I'll train them up, they'll get pregnant, and then they won't come back." About a year or 2 years ago, a young woman said in my office, who said, "I was told that I can't go on the road because the band doesn't want women on the bus."
Right.
So that those are things that happened. They didn't happen to me, but they happened to a young woman who told me firsthand precisely who said it and in what context and how they said it. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, that's as discouraging as it is to hear that. I know you and I are aligned on this. I'm a solutions focused person. So
Yeah.
it's like, you identify a problem, and the temptation is to identify the hero and the villain within the problem, but the problem still might exist no matter whether or not you identify the particular villains and
Well,
heroes
if
within it.
is this a problem? So if me being a woman is a problem, it's a problem I can't solve. So I can't. That's and I can't. That can't be the problem
That's not the
because
problem.
right.
The problem is sexism. The problem is the perception of how people view um, if someone's concerned about having a woman on the bus, it's like, well, why does that concern exist? If someone doesn't want to support an employee through lifestyle changes, it's like, why does that problem exist? The problem isn't the gender. The problem is, how do we figure out more opportunities for women to be welcomed into the business? If we really want to change the proportionality of women and men in this business, that's the problem. That's what
Right.
we got to solve and focus on.
And we have to accept that um, women will women will enter childbearing years, and we are the ones that nature determined as the ones who carry the babies.
Right.
So that's just the way it is, and that's just the way it is. And you have to work around it. You just do. Um, Women on the bus, uh, I think that legislation helps. I think that if you have a law to point to and say, just want to remind you that that's illegal. But the challenge is it is not necessarily illegal. If I have less than 15 employees, the law says I can, and I'm going to air quote this, discriminate. So it is not illegal if you only employ 15 employees for the vast majority of the year. You can discriminate. So
Right.
it's incredibly frustrating. Um, do you remember the old phrase that Ginger Rogers had to do everything that Fred Astaire did, only she did it backwards and in heels? I still feel that way. I So let's just say that you and I went to dinner together. What happens when they ask us one check or two, we say one check. What happens when the waiter or waitress brings the check? Who are they going to like? That still exists from time to time. Usually they put it in the middle, but for most of my life they would have handed you the check, and
Yeah.
that's kind of discrimination. It's a microaggression. It is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Just
happy to buy you lunch for
yeah,
future reference, just so
and
you
I
know, or
know you
dinner.
are. Yeah,
But I totally hear what you're saying, and so I think it depends on. I think it depends. It's a little bit dependent on the culture, and as things change, I think you're right. Like, they would have always chosen the man, but now they're more likely to put the bill in the middle because people are just more aware of those things and how they're being perceived. And I think,
And not just how they're being perceived, but that those 25-year-old wait staff know that 50% of the time the woman is actually going to pay the bill. Perhaps
right,
it's that, is that 50% of the time the woman is the one slapping down the credit card, because that's the reality of their life on a daily basis as wait staff.
right,
Yeah.
right. And the awareness just helps sort of instigate the change, right? And I think awareness is sort of like the foundational component um, to working backwards from, getting rid of the microaggressions for sure. But at some level, it's even a substantial move forward on how we need to just see each other in the realm as human beings. And I mean, I've got no problem with discrimination if it's in the realm of competence.
Oh, yeah, that's not
It's like,
discrimination.
hey, listen, if
That's a
if
fact.
this person, despite their immutable characteristics, is the best person for the job, well, then that's the way it's got to be. And as more women continue to rise and exemplify their levels of high competence in the business, and there are plenty of people doing that,
Oh, yeah.
then I think this is a problem that just continues to sort of evolve its way out of culture. But I think it's got to come back down to results. Can you perform under pressure? Are you the best person for the job? And the more that we are aware of that and less aware of what am I setting myself, if I have a woman on the bus, does that mean that the guys can't act like guys? Well, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean you want to traipse around naked on the bus? Because no, then you can't do that. But here's the truth. Most of the guys on the bus probably don't appreciate that either.
Right.
So it's a human problem, and human problems are always very complex. There's not simple solutions to them, and it's always interesting to get the perspective of somebody who's endured it for 40 years, like you have,
Yeah.
and then also probably seen the evolution or borne witness to the evolution to some degree. And I think most people would agree we got a lot of work to do. We're not there yet,
Yeah.
but
Because
we're
there,
moving in the right direction overall.
I think, um, uh, so two thoughts. The first one is we talked about awareness. So there's awareness. And did we say acceptance? Did we actually
No,
say, yeah, because I have to accept that um, women, you cannot discriminate based on gender, race, sexual orientation, the laundry list. You
religion.
cannot, religion, you cannot discriminate. Um, I lost my train of thought. You can't discriminate. And then there was another one. I think it had to do with evolving.
No, you were
Um,
talking about acceptance. So you were
yeah,
saying we
right.
can't discriminate based on those criteria,
Yeah.
which I
Oh,
think everybody agrees
yeah.
that's sane.
And we're here. Like we're here. We're 51% of the population. We are smart and capable. So you have to accept that.
Yes,
And then the other thing too is I think that the greatest. So there was a generation of women before me, and I think of them in like Frances Preston in Nashville. There was Frances Preston and Connie Bradley and Donna Hilley, who rose from secretaries to run BMI, ASCAP, Sony Tree. Like those were great examples. And then the next generation, which I'm a part of, is that we got our foot in the door and we stayed. We were
yes.
intimidated, we were belittled, we were harassed, but we stayed because I firmly believe if that we had left, that the gentleman would have closed the door behind us. So we stayed and kept the door open, and
Right.
I think that's a great gift. Just stay in and keep the door open for everybody else.
It paves the way for future generations, but it also reminds the people who are more who are more attracted or magnetized towards the idea of acting in a sexist manner that you're not going anywhere and your competence is going to remain valued, right? Like, I've always believed that if you want to be a part of something as an individual, take gender and race and sex and religion out of it, that if you are a valued part of that community, if you're a valued part of that relationship, you will continue to be respected, you will continue to be revered, and you will continue to be proportionately remunerated for the value you bring to the table,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And and it seems pretty simple. I mean, our company is comprised of over 50%
Yeah.
female representation. And
Yeah.
as I said to you before, nobody has their job here because they have a vagina. They have
Yes.
a job here because they're the best at what they do. And I think the more that we just focus on competence and provide opportunity and acceptance, of course, that's part of it. Because if people can't get in the door, that's a whole other fucking problem.
Yeah.
But if we provide the opportunity for people to get a shot at it and they prove themselves, it doesn't matter what you identify as. It doesn't matter what you are. You're getting the job done. You're getting the result required for the client, and that's paramount at the end of the day.
I think the conversation is different when we start to talk about race, because um, all what you just said was the best person gets the job. Well, that sort of assumes that the playing field is equal, and it does have sexism comes into this just a little bit, because when I was in college and high school, the playing field was not equal. Men, boys had more advantage, and one of the advantages that they had was sports. I am not a Title IX baby. So when I was in high school, women did not have sports comparable to men. So sports teach great skills. They teach teamwork, and they teach dedication. I think sports are a great way to learn life skills. And my generation of women did not have that at the high school level. So the playing field was not level. I think that playing field might be level now. It's certainly not true of race in America. The playing field is not level. So if you are a young black man in America, you do not have the opportunity to get to the competency level where you can compete.
So, what are
So,
the things that are still barriers for people on that front in this day and age?
housing, education, equal pay, mass incarceration. It's, yeah,
So, on
yeah,
a systematic level, but more
yes.
so
Oh, it's
on an
systemic.
individual level. And I agree. I never thought about that assessment on sports. That's a brilliant.
I think it's
Um,
true. Yeah.
it's brilliant because you're right. Like in sports, you learn teamwork, you learn how to fail. Get your courage together and get up and try again. You learn all of these transferable skills in sports that lend themselves so well to succeeding in the real world. And if you haven't been exposed to that to the degree that your counterparts have, then you are really at a disadvantage. So
Yes.
that's a really good point. I get that. But on an individual level, this day and age, if somebody has fought their way out of their circumstances and ended up with the education and the skill set that they need, are they
Which would
still
be a
being
miracle,
held
but that's a
right? Which
miracle. It's a
right?
miracle to come out of
Agreed.
poverty, black
Yeah,
poverty, and fight your way out. That's a freaking miracle. It's a miracle. It is.
yeah. I mean,
And this is a woman who, like, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I remember the night that King was shot. My mother was pregnant with my younger brother. I remember tanks rolling down the streets of Memphis, Tennessee in 1968. I know all of this. So the struggle is real. I also, like, my people have been in the state of Tennessee since 1797. I understand systemic racism. I am
right.
a Southerner. I see it every day, every day.
And I don't think anyone in their right mind would argue about the advantages versus the disadvantages
Right.
in race on a systematic level. But taking that for a second and not setting it aside because it isn't applicable or because it doesn't matter, because it does matter, but going, when you get those outliers who break through and they're competent and they're strong and they're calculated and they're intelligent and they can crush it in whatever particular skill set that they've decided to pursue. At this point, are we still seeing companies in the entertainment business preferentially hiring based on race?
I think that we have to help them break through. I think that the sheer numbers of talented Black youth that are breaking through is still really low. I think it's really low.
Now,
And
how do we do that? And I agree, but how do
yeah,
we do that without coming off as patronizing to a degree, right? Like, I think that's the line we're all trying to figure out right now. It's like, you know, how do you do that without coming off as some sort of a hero, or, doing it for the wrong reasons? Like, I
Right.
see that in our business where people just want to do good because they want to look good, but are they really doing good for that individual in the long term, right? Like, I think that's a fair question.
Okay. So you can always tell what people care about because that's where they spend their time and their money. So just to bring it back to AIBA for a second, we give away tons. I think last year was almost 30 different scholarships, and we're purposeful about it. So it's been a debate for really since the late 1800s about what how education plays a role, and you can't discount that. But it probably, so if you can claw your way into college, then you can probably find some sort of scholarship that will launch you forward, like launch, project you forward.
Right.
It's just you have to get that far. So I think that government service has a lot to do with it. I think that the private sector steps in. I've always thought that Girls and Boys Club do a good job. I think that Junior Achievement does a good job. They start in high school, and I think if you can grab somebody by the time they're 14 or 15, that you've got a shot. Statistically, that's probably Oprah Winfrey would tell me that I'm 4 years too late. That you've got to grab a child, you've got to grab a girl by the time she's 12 um, to have any statistical impact. That you have to
Right.
reach that child by the time they're 12. So, and
Right.
again, it's housing, it's education, it's mass incarceration. If the entire community is run by women, then that is what it is. And women have been running generations. We've been running entire communities for decades. Well, for centuries, but so
Yeah.
Tennessee, for example, in this past legislative session, reviewed. Remember the tough on crime bills, laws from the 1990s, and
Yeah.
the war on drugs, where you could have an ounce of pot and you could spend 8 years in prison.
Yeah.
Like there's a difference between prison and jail. Um, I have done 8 years of work with the women in the Department of Corrections for the state of Tennessee. I find that to be very rewarding. So there, and this is probably Jim. You just got. I don't know that I've ever said that to anybody in a public forum because it's nobody's business. But if you're looking for a way to be of service quietly, go work in the Department of Corrections as a volunteer. There's a lot of ways that you don't have to tell anybody in the business sector how you spend your time and money. You just got to find your passion. I do well with homeless. I like working with the homeless, and I like to work with women who are incarcerated. I feel like I can be of service. I'm no good in children's hospitals. Winona Judd was the best person I have ever seen visiting children's hospitals. She never saw the ailment. She never saw, because it's pretty grim. She could go in and minister to a burn victim, a child, and never see that affliction at all. All she saw was just the angel spirit. I can't do it. I start to cry. I'm not of service. I have to go sit in the lobby. I'm terrible, terrible, terrible at it. But I found, eventually I found what I was good at. And I
Well,
think
and
that,
good on you. Good on you
yeah,
for having the self-awareness to understand where you could serve and to continue to push yourself to serve and make a difference, because I think you're right. I think that a lot of people want to help, but they're too emotionally overwrought at
I
times to
can't, yeah,
actually be of utility
yeah,
in those
yes,
situations. And
yeah,
so, dialing that back, grounding with that self-awareness and going, actually, this is where I really think I can help people.
yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about some of the stories of victory and vindication that have come out of you volunteering in those places and helping people get back on their feet once they start to reintegrate into the real world.
I have no idea. Like literally, the rules to volunteer with the Department of Corrections are very rigid. I cannot share any of my information as a volunteer. I can't tell you my phone number or where I live. It is discouraged to even tell people your last name. And I have no contact with those women once they leave. So I have no idea.
Right.
So I am toiling in this field because I believe that I can be of service. But
Even though you're not aware of the
I have
actual
no idea.
result after the fact.
No
Right.
idea. No idea if I
Got
was
it.
ever of service to anyone other than the fact that when we show up with our classes, women will say to me consistently, "This is the highlight of my week." I'm
So
so glad that, yeah, but
it's the
I have no idea.
process that keeps you motivated,
And I got to have
not
the
the
faith.
result.
Yeah, I got to have the faith that I'm doing the right thing. I see
Right.
no results. I have no idea. No idea. So
So you've been doing that for 8 years.
8 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Good
I
on you.
like it.
And have you convinced other industry professionals to take up the charge with you?
Only one, but I don't. It's because I don't tell anybody. Because again, you
Right.
said the point that, and I believe that there's got to be some quiet service. Um, I I give a portion of my earnings to charity, um, much like how religion tithes. So I do that. It's nobody's business. If here's the thing. Um, Only one person has ever asked me, and she was a former employee because I would say, because I have to leave on the day that I go to prison, I have to say, I'm going to prison. I got to leave early. 10 o'clock, I'm going to prison.
Gotta
Um,
go serve my time.
yeah. So she knew that. And when she got to a certain level in her career, she reached out to me and said, I think I could be of service. How do I get into it? But because I don't tell anybody, nobody's really reached out. So.
Right.
I think
Right.
people find. Uh, I think if you seek, you'll find. I don't think opportunities to be of community service are too terribly hard to find if you look for them. I think
Yeah.
you'll
And,
find.
and there's utility, I think, to meditation and prayer in those moments of going, hey, listen, I want to serve. I need an opportunity to come to me in the next
Yeah.
6 months, 6 weeks, so that I understand where I best could fit, right?
Oh yeah.
And if you put yourself in that headspace, something is likely to come your way. And it's interesting. There's all these discussions right now in the United States, and not to put you on the spot about police reform, and I think one of the things that they're missing, just as a Canadian watching my friends
Yeah.
south of the border, and listen, we have this problem in Canada too, so it's not just an American problem, but prison reform and really sinking into roads to redemption for these people as opposed to just purely punitive methods, right? And I think a lot of those educational programs exist, but I would like to see them accentuated more. It's like, how do we take an individual who's slid off the rails and help foster their passions to become a contributing, fulfilled member of society? Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want a society full of people who are winners, people who are pursuing their passions, people who are excited to get out of bed every day and go serve in whatever capacity they do. And a society full of people like that are less likely to do things that would land you on the wrong side of the law.
Yeah. Because I think that many of those acts are committed out of desperation. If you are in a no-win situation, then you are desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. So I think it really begins with the judicial system, where sentencing is more compassionate. I think um, that might be the greatest gift of age. Is with age comes wisdom and compassion. Is that really, honestly, Jim, but for the grace of God, there go I. That could be me. I got born into a ridiculous birthright. I am white in America. My parents were middle class. That's a ridiculous birthright. I did nothing for it. I could have been born into a different circumstance. And really, I have received much, and so much is required of me. I believe that to be true.
Right. And you found a way to serve. And yeah, back to the punitive measures thing. It's like it's focusing on the end result. The end result is we want more people in society who are contributing members to the greater good. Right. That's the end. That's what we really want, I think. And defining that, remembering that, as we are redefining or rebuilding the judicial system, at some point that is going to come under review as well. It's like, okay, how do we take this individual who's maybe 21 years old and they've had a rough go in life and they've screwed up a few times, and how do we help them get on track? Because we can keep them in jail for 20 years. That's not contributing to society. Or in prison, or we can help them reform themselves, find their passion, find something that ignites them so that they can repurpose their energy to serving and to being a contributing member of the community. And it breaks my heart that as evolved as we become on many social issues and moving in the right direction, that we still haven't really grappled with that one as much as we should. And maybe I'm ignorant to what's happening in terms of prison programs, so I shouldn't go out on a limb too far. But it just feels to me like we're all about punishing. And listen, I think there are members of society who are dangerous, and they're a danger to
yes.
other members of society. They're a danger to themselves. Some of those people, like if you're a chronic pedophile, we probably need to figure out how we're going to keep you separated from a situation where you're going to harm or ruin anybody's life. I get it. But if you slid off the rails, you got a drug possession charge, it's not the end of the world. How do we get you back into society so that you can manage your habit and somehow create some goals for you, so you have something to strive towards, so you become a happy, fulfilled individual? That's what we want. That's what we need. That's what we're all gunning for.
I think that every human has that need. We have a human need for society, and we have a human need to fulfill something. And I think there's two things. One, I think that I can bring that back to the period of history that we're in right now with this pandemic, that many of us have lost that ability to be of service. We go to work, we put on shows that make people happy, we create some of the best memories of their lives, and we aren't able to do that right now. So there's that general feeling of, what's my purpose in life today? Because
and as a society, I think we've really focused more on the achievements and accomplishments rather than the efforts and responsibilities and accountabilities that go into receiving those achievements down the road too, right? So it's imperative to go, yeah, listen, if you've been blessed, just like you said, by birthright and by your hard work, by the way, and everything you've done with the gifts you had, how do you find a way to give back? How do you find a way to contribute back? And I don't think enough of us are asking that question of ourselves.
Well, I hope that we are. I hope that we are. I hope
maybe this podcast will remind people to do
maybe
that.
maybe somebody will just go and commit some random act of kindness later today. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be great.
That would be the best. It would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, those things definitely make the world go round. So back to AIBA and your experience in the business. You are one of the best networkers I've ever met. Obviously, that's something that's key to your job. I mean, you really are. Like you're very proactive. I remember very early on in my membership with AIBA, you were very interested in connecting me with other promoters in the US to make sure that I had an opportunity to learn from them, glean some knowledge, understand some things that may not be happening up here on the ground. And so you do that with such effortless effect. Do you think that that's got a lot to do with your experience or your position, or is it a combination of everything? Like, how have you become this matchmaker in the industry to the degree that you have?
Well, technically it is my job. As the executive director of a trade organization, that is my job. So that makes it easier because it is my job. I think that I also come from that culture. You mentioned that every time you come to Nashville, you see and feel the community that we have here, is that we all live and breathe in a really tight space. And so maybe it's just a byproduct of being a Nashvilleian for so long, is that I will say, hey, Bob, do you know Bill? Bill, you totally need to know Bob, because that's sort of the Southern Nashville way. My grandmother, one of my grandmothers was very much like that. She was a networker. just
What did
before
she
that.
do for a living?
Huh?
What did she do for a living?
Nothing. She was a homemaker. She was born in 1911. No,
She just
she
had
did.
the passion
Yeah, yeah.
to
She
connect
just
people.
she was just naturally that way. She just, naturally was a connector. Um, yeah. My dad is real gregarious. He's like a people person. He ran a grocery store, which is not unlike running a building. People come to your space for things that they need, and when hopefully they get what they need and leave happy. That's pretty much what we do in the concert business. We provide happiness. I hope you come to this event, get what you need, which is happiness, and leave happy.
Right.
So yeah,
Get a break from all your problems for, 3 minutes at a time while you sing along with your
yeah,
favorite songs and your favorite
yeah.
hits.
With
Yeah, and
people, yeah, with people who love that as much as you do.
there's something to be said for that aspect of our business, and every time I feel like I need my battery recharged, what I need to do is go down and bear witness to a live event
Yeah,
and
go stand in the back
see.
of the house. Yeah,
Right, and
yeah,
a lot of times I'll face the stage, but there's plenty of times where I'll actually turn from the stage and just face the audience and just
yeah,
watch their reaction because
yeah.
it's such a beautiful thing, and see how they're receiving the music, and that still ignites my fire after all
Oh
these
yeah,
years. I'm sure that's something that still motivates you.
oh yeah. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Just the
So
arc of
what's
energy.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
and just watching that and being a part of it and knowing that you're a catalyst for it. So tell me what's next for Aib after we get this through this crazy ass year. Obviously, the conference is off. It's just not safe to have it. I get it, but
But we'll
moving
do it
forward,
virtually. We'll do a virtual
yeah,
conference.
the virtual
Yeah.
conference.
Uh-huh.
Right, right, right. But I mean, I meant the in-person one in Nashville, which is just that different experience. But the
It is.
virtual one, tell us a little bit about that process, and then I want to talk about how things are going to roll out moving forward. But tell me a little bit about what people should expect, and technologically how you're making it all happen.
Well, some of it will be very much like this. We'll do some one-on-one interviews, like will happen online and not with that person on those two people on stage and the rest of us in the audience. We'll do some of the panels, the key panels, the same way. We'll have Agents Alley. So Agents Alley will look like a gallery of logos for the agencies, and you can click on each logo and get a message from that agency. Just like you would when you go to Agents Alley to the booth or when you go to the parties. This is who I'm booking next year. This is at what level. You do not want to miss this artist. You want to get in early. Just that direct message.
Yeah,
Um,
the hardcore pitch deck.
yeah, yeah. And we'll do some music online. So, we'll just take it online. So it will be very similar. We'll just take it online. And then AIBA is rolling out an e-learning program. So it's online programming. There are 10 courses. They start with intro to entertainment business, intro to live. Then we break it down by segments, artist, agent, promoter, venue, the event. And that course will begin with the offer and go all the way through the advance. And then we have a course on day of. Then we also have a course on business math and business basics. So we'll roll that out on December the 9th.
Now,
I think it's
love
timely.
it.
Yeah, good.
It's timely. Would you suggest that it's a good idea for any young person who's looking to get into the industry to get signed up with this? Obviously, there's the educational component, but there's going to be a networking component, and it may not even be a bad idea for artists. I'm a big
Yeah.
advocate of artists arming themselves with as much information as possible so that they can keep their teams accountable and responsible for their duties at hand.
Yeah, and never be a victim of the business.
Right.
I think that's a big change from my first time in the industry. Gene and Paul were never. Well, that's not true. I think they had an experience early in their career that taught them to not be victims of the business. Like, it is your brand, it is your livelihood. You need to take some level of responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to go get an accounting degree and take the CPA exam, but you should be financially literate. You must know that you're okay, and I don't think that any person should just trust an expert.
You should
I
understand an arena settlement.
Yeah, yes.
Right.
Yeah, I think you should. I think you should.
Yeah.
I settled with Paul Stanley after the show many nights.
Yeah, and he's well aware then of what they've gotten themselves into, what's been spent on marketing and the building
He
fees and costs, and all of that factors into where they might want to play in the market next time.
he wanted to see the ad pack and the marketing budget. If not every night, it could be like 4 nights in a row. I want to see that. That's when we made copies of everything. The ad pack, they gave one to the artist at settlement. He wanted to see the ad pack, and he wanted me to bullet point the marketing every single time we went through settlement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I once represented an artist who had been doing hard ticket shows since before I was in the business, and she had never been walked through a settlement sheet. She didn't understand that if you're doing a hard ticket show in a theater, that if you charge back all of these show expenses, they come off the top. And it
Oh.
does start to eat away at the earnings, right? And
Oh, wow.
and and so it was a great opportunity to just sit and have that conversation. And then it was great because within 48 hours she had her tour manager send me a new rider that was much more lean and mean and much
Yeah.
more tour friendly because she got it right.
Yeah.
She was like,
Yeah.
oh, I've been paying for this shit all my life. Oh, okay, well, you know what, I'll bet we can do with 8 rooms instead of 14, and I'll bet we can do with this much catering as opposed to this much. And it was just so cool to see. But it surprises me how little education there is out there for artists. I'm really glad to see that IEBA is providing this because I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a really good opportunity for artists to sit through the process and really understand. So, to use your words, they won't end up as a victim of the business.
Yeah. Good. I
Yeah,
think it has a
I love
lot of
it.
value. I also think that students pay a lot of money these days to get a bachelor's in music business, and then they have that bachelor's and realize that they don't actually have any real skills. Um, I think that music business, brick and mortar institutions teach publishing and songwriting and record label pretty well. They don't teach live very well at all, as a general rule.
Yeah,
So I think we're filling that gap. And especially this year when going back to school may be a challenge for many. To physically
right.
return to school may be a challenge to many. And then if school is going to go online, perhaps you might not want to pay $35,000 for a year online when you could take a year at IEBA's course for less than 2,000. So we'll see.
Right.
I think that's been part of this period where we can't do the things that we normally do. So what do we do instead? And this was one of those. Instead of this, we're going to do that, and I think it's going to be valuable. In fact, I know it is.
Innovate.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So just recap the subject headers for me again in terms of the
I think I can do
curriculum.
it. I think I can do it off the top of my head. So the first
Okay.
course, so each course is 2.5 to 3 hours long. The
Okay.
first course is Intro to the Entertainment Business. The second one is Intro to Live. Um, and then the third really is Business Math and Business Basics. You would be surprised with the number of students who struggle to get from gross to net and can't back out sales tax.
Right.
So math is numbers, and dollars are numbers. So if you're not good at math, you're not good at business. So it's time to get good at math. So then we talk about the artist, management, agencies, promoters, venues, then the event, which goes from the offer all the way through the advance. And then the last course is day of. So it
Well,
starts when the security guard unlocks the back door, lifts up the loading dock gate, and we crack the first truck.
brilliant. Now, when are you launching this?
December the 9th.
December 9th. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And let's make sure that when that is launched, we refresh the podcast with the links that people will need to sign up.
Great. Thank you.
So, yeah, we'll do that for sure because it sounds like a great program. It's much needed. And obviously, anything I can do to help, let me know. I'm
Okay.
in. So,
Thank you. I think it'll also be a good training tool for companies. So let's just say that you're a big company and you hire a number of interns and new employees on a fairly regular basis. You can sit them down and have them go through these classes either on company time or on their own time, and IEBA will do the training for you. I will
Great.
train your new employee or your new intern on what a ticket account is, how to read an audit, and how to do an advance. I'll train them for you.
I think you're going to be super busy.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But the course will, like the course will train them.
Yeah.
IEBA
Oh,
will
that's
just, here's
great.
the package, just have your kids take it, and then you don't have to explain to them what force majeure is ever again.
Well, you can certainly come up with some really great initiatives when your intention is to serve, to help,
Yeah, yeah,
to
always.
foster,
Yeah, always.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. You've been doing it for
Thank
years. You
you.
continue to do it. You're a
Mhm.
force, and I just it's been over an hour now, so
I
I'm
know.
gonna wrap this
It
up. But
flew by.
beautiful getting a chance to converse with
I
you, and I'd love to have
know.
you back on.
I'd love to. Hey, thanks for thinking of me. It was fun. It's fun just to talk
Absolutely.
about big concepts for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I really
Okay.
enjoyed it, and
Yeah,
looking forward to serving on the board. Thanks
yeah,
again for doing this. I
yeah.
appreciate the
Board
time, Pam.
meeting is week after next.
Awesome. Looking forward
See
to
you
it.
then. Yeah.
Okay. Take
Okay.
care.
Bye,
Bye.
Jim.
Bye.
Bye.